Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Joining me on the phone, it is guitar great Michael Schenker. His new album is Immortal, and it comes out at the end of January 29th to be specific. It is absolutely mind-blowing, as all things Michael Schenker are. And Alan Niven, bonjour, comment allez-vous?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Fighting off a bit of a New Year's cold, but one more day and hopefully better ones coming.
Yeah, I don't know how you get a cold out in Arizona. I know how we get them here in Montreal, but I gotta say, I've been cold free this year. The fact that I get to work from home, I don't get to meet anybody who's giving me any cold, so it's fantastic. I gotta love that. But yes,
you know what it is? It's the petri dish that our kids swim in. Our kids are perfect and our kids are healthy until we send them off to school, and then they come back with weird diseases and odd frames of mind.
Well, I got to say, my daughter has graduated high school and my son is in grade 9. I don't know how you count it in the States, but here we say grade 9. And when they were in kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, every September, no fail, within 2 weeks of school starting, I had something, usually a bronchitis, usually a sinus infection, there was always something, and it was major and it required pills. And now that they've moved up and they're not, and now that my son's doing all the online work, I've been sick free for, no colds, no sore throats, no bronchitis. It's been terrific. So kind of hope he stays home for the next 3 years.
You know what the miracle was, talking about petri dishes? One of the ultimate potential petri dishes is also called a tour bus. And the fact that more people weren't stricken with nasty diseases in the early 80s was a goddamn miracle. But I can remember when certain things started to surface, everybody I knew was in a state of total panic.
Yeah, well, we're surviving. But let's get over to Michael Schenker now. I'm really, really late to the party when it comes to Michael Schenker and UFO. I mean, like incredibly late, like embarrassingly late. But and I've mentioned this in different interviews and on different podcasts. When you listen to what Schenker was doing in 71, 72, 73, 74, and then you listen to Randy Rhoads, and then you listen to Eddie Van Halen, you go, ooh, there's definitely an influence there. For you who were certainly more willing to listen to UFO than I was 20 years ago or even longer, what did Schenker mean to you in terms of a guitarist or a songwriter, or is he a guitar god or is he just a guitarist?
No, he's an exceptional player, and there's a very beguiling, unique factor to him. Being a bit of a Brit, you can have the attitude of looking at continental Europe and going, yeah, they try every now and then, but the French don't know how to rock and roll, and the Germans aren't that good at it. They tend to be far too precise in their writing and their performance. And for me, with Michael, he had a reputation in the early 70s that actually exceeded UFO. And for me, given that I was so young and so heavily opinionated back in those days, UFO were not quite there. They were trying hard, but didn't quite pull it off. And then in 1977, they put out a record that just took me out at the knees. And I went, now we have it. Now we've got great material, convincing emotional performances, and this extraordinary ability of Michael to play with feel within precision, which is the unique quality that he has. He's a very precise player, but he moves you. And I mean, we could sit here, we could go through countless very precise players who don't move you, but Michael does. And that album, Lights Out by UFO, is to me a timeless classic. It sounds as good to me today as it did in the beginning of 1977.
I am going to agree with that because I think of the songs on there: "Too Hot to Handle," "Lights Out," "Electric Phase" in particular, and of course, "Love to Love." Now, you told me a while back, "Love to Love" was the greatest song ever, or your favorite song, or one of your favorite songs, and I went, it's kind of okay. And then I listened, and I listened, and I listened. And yeah, it is absolutely a bona fide classic. I mean, it is fantastic. Yes. And I've heard different versions. I've heard Steve Overland of FM sing it. I've heard other bands. And it is that good that it transcends anybody's interpretation or anybody's vocal. You know, when you have a song that's that good, almost any interpretation will work, and it does. So yeah, you were right. I have to give. I acquiesce to, or I give to you.
It's one of those songs, Mitch, though, that goes into the column of don't even think about trying to cover it, because the original recorded version on Lights Out is so definite and splendid. Resist the temptation of going, oh, I wouldn't mind having a go at that. You know, it's just far too good a performance to even have the temerity to pick up a guitar and go, yeah, let's knock that out and see how it goes. No, Love to Love you don't touch. It's magnificent. It is what it is. And
it is.
There it is.
And you know what? UFO released in November this Strangers in the Night deluxe box set, which captures them 6 shows in a row, October 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 1978. And you hear Michael's playing, and you hear Love to Love, and you hear Rock Bottom, and you know, folks will go, well, it's 6 shows in a row. I'm not going to buy that. It's the same thing. It's like, no, you don't understand. This band was on, and every single night, it's the same show, but it's a very different show, because Michael would play whatever inspired him. So the solos are different, the pings are different, the bends, everything is just, there's just these little nuances, and you go, ooh, okay. And that's what Michael Schenker is. He's just a very creative guy, and it was a pleasure to talk to him.
That goes to another aspect of him as a performer, in that Michael is somebody who is in the moment, whatever that moment is, whether it's a plate of mashed potatoes or his guitar. He loves mashed potatoes, by the way. He's very much in the moment. And in terms of not listening to somebody play the same song, even in the same week, what do we say to all the Grateful Dead fans who spent their lives trying to accumulate every single performance by that band? The reason they did it was because the band that they loved was in the moment, and each moment was slightly different. So go check the UFO box out. It's worth it for Michael.
Yeah, and before we get over to Michael, I'll finish on that thought. Is we've lost that in the 2000s. You know, you used to go to a show, whether it was Aerosmith or whether it was UFO or anybody, Led Zeppelin, and there was always something in the moment. Now it's so sanitized. You can go to 5 shows on the same tour, and you're getting the exact same show all 5 nights. The only thing that changes is instead of "Hey Montreal," they say "Hey Cleveland." And I kind of wish we'd go back to in the moment and not precise, dialed in on the grid, and whatever. Unfortunate. But,
well, it takes away the excitement. I mean, you know, there's been a couple of bands I've worked with that in the moment could be sublime, or in the moment could be catastrophic. Let's toss a coin and see what happens tonight.
Yeah. Well, I've been to one of those at the Olympic Stadium, and I know. Anyway, here is a guitarist extraordinaire, the one, the only, Michael Schenker.
Yeah.
Good. I'm ready to talk about the new album Immortal, and I have to say it is a fucking masterpiece. It is so good, so good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you know. So in fact, let's just start the interview right now. Let me talk to you about this Immortal, because I'm a huge fan. I actually have 1,700 Michael Schenker Group, UFO, and Scorpion songs in my phone, and Your playing is phenomenal. So let me talk about these singers here on Immortal. You have Ralph Sheepers, Joe Lynn Turner, Ronnie Romero, Michael Voss. Talk to me about choosing the different singers for the different songs, because when you look at your career, whether it's Leif Sundin, whether it's Gary Barton, whether it's Robin McCauley, I should say, you've always chosen great singers and the perfect singers for each song. Talk to me about the choices of singers this time.
It's kind of a long story, if you have time, because in 2019, I actually decided to do the 50th anniversary, and with guest musicians, friends and fans, and it kind of dragged on, and I got to the point where I actually thought I missed the timing for the 2020 50th anniversary. And then I went to the 70,000 metal, tons of metal, the cruise thing. And in the meantime, I actually gave up doing this album because I didn't think it was possible to release the album in 2020, which would have been the 50th anniversary. Then my agent told me, but Michael, you released, Lonesome Crow, the Scorpions released the album in 72, and I went like, that gives me 2 years to celebrate. Fantastic! So I've got plenty of time. But at that point, I decided, because it's so difficult to get musicians, from all over the world connected and make things happening, that I decided to keep it more compact. I was very happy with, to get a band that is, just the band without any guests. And so I was very happy with Ronnie Romero. He was singing on Resurrection, or was it Evolution or Resurrection, I think. And so I decided, and then Barry Sparks, he kept emailing me, I want to play on your album. And I said, okay, you got it. And, so it went like, and then Bodo Shop, Steve Mann, and myself, did I leave somebody out? So, it was a 5-piece, and when I came off the cruise, I had my recording equipment with me on the cruise, just in case it gets bored 5 days on the cruise. But I never actually recorded I never actually wrote anything then. But when I came off the cruise, I actually spent 4 days in Miami in a hotel before I went back home to the UK. And, so I started going and hoping, things can work out. And the strange thing was that as I was doing all of this, or as time, was moving, all of a sudden, I came back to the UK. I switched on the TV, and then eventually there was like a virus thing, and restrictions, and it became very alarming. That was around March maybe, and it started picking up very fast in the UK too, and so now everything became more complicated because all the borders, my usually route that I take by car is going to the Eurochannel and via France, Belgium, Holland, and then make it to the studio to Michael Voss, the co-producer, in Germany. but I couldn't. It was not possible to do. So my team told me there's a way, to go from Brighton to Harwich and then take a ferry, sleep overnight 7 hours or something like that, and then get to the Hook of Holland, and you can make it to the studio. And so I actually, in the process of all of that, I had to go back and forth from the UK and Germany 4 times, and every time except for one time, I had to go on 14 days quarantine. So that was quite a heavy task, to accept. But I'm the leader of the band. I'm putting it together. It's my 50th anniversary, so I had to be the one to. I actually ended up 42 days on quarantine altogether. Unbelievable. I have a beautiful house and a beautiful property, and I rediscovered my garden. The first 14 days was great, and I designed things and repair things and stuff like that. Next 14 days was a bit more boring. The last 14 days I would not recommend to anybody. It was really, really hard. But if I wouldn't have done that, the album would have never happened. So it leads me to your question. The first time I came to Germany, I made it to Germany, put all my written music down on a backing track. I mean, just to put everything down the way and then arranged it, and and get a picture of what the album was going to be like, based on just hearing electronic drums and electronic bass and my guitar rhythm backing, the compositions in general. And then when it was time to actually do the first vocal, we called up Ronnie Romero and said, sorry, I can't. Everything is locked. I think he lives in Bulgaria, and I have commitments, and I can't go on 14 days quarantine. Even my drummer, he lives in Italy, and he started to everybody got scared. It was amazing. They all, fortunately, all my musicians are producers and engineers, etc., have their own studio, and so I had to start to improvise. I said to Ronnie, "Don't worry, if he cannot make it now, we will look for a solution, and we get in touch with you later." Then Amy, my partner, who is a bass player, she has got a very good taste, and I don't listen to music for the last 50 years, so I don't know what's out there. And she said, "Ralph Shippers," and I said, "Okay, if you say so, I trust you." And I said to Michael Voss, "What about, do you know Ralph?" He said, "Absolutely, he is a fantastic singer. And he's also, from Germany." And the next day, they were recording. It was unbelievable. And that became the beginning of the first vocals for the album and on Drilled to Kill. And then, almost simultaneously, Brian Tichy called up Michael Voss and said, "I want to make a tribute to Michael Schenker. I offer 6 songs on drums, and I went, what? That's amazing. He's one of the best drummers,
Agreed. He's terrific.
He was unbelievable. He actually was on the first Temple of Rock, or on the second Temple of Rock album, before The Devil Knows You're Dead, with Doogie singing, and it was phenomenal. I mean, drumming was unbelievable. And so, if that wasn't enough, he called back Michael Frost, a buddy of mine. He's also a Michael Schenker fan. He wants to make a tribute to Michael Schenker, and I said to Michael Frost, but what? He's a heavy-duty keyboard player. What are we gonna do? We already have Steve Mann. That's the guy I left out earlier, I think. And he's, I wanted to keep the album more guitar orientated, and we asked Steve, just to put some coloring in, to keep, like some sweetness and stuff like that, but keep it really a metal, but I want, to make it more guitar, and I had written all my guitar parts, and so that it was the only way to do it. And so Michael first said, like, well, Michael, why don't you do a jam, and the guy, the buddy, was Derek Sherinian, and he is like a top 10
maestro. He's a maestro. Derek is awesome. You can't go wrong with Derek.
But I didn't know that. I knew nothing, and eventually we put it all to. Oh, and I said, well, you mean like what are we going to do with Derek? Maybe you can do a jam with him. I said, a jam with. We already have got Steve. I've never done a keyboard guitar jam, and he said, and Michael said that, well, maybe it's the first time, maybe it's good, maybe your fans will love it. I've never done it before, and it puts a fresh new approach, at least for one song. And I said to him, you mean like John Lord and Richie Blackmore? Yeah, something like that. I said, okay, maybe you're right. I think it would be something that I have never done before in 50 years. And so many people would be very surprised to hear something like that. And so before I even knew, I had an incredible singer, Ralph, and an incredible drummer, Brian, and an incredible keyboard player, Derek, on the opening song, Thrill to Kill. I was blown away when all of that came together. I tell you, I was so happy, and especially because it's straight in your face. It's up, and it's metal, and it's just. I'm so happy with that song,
It's a great song. And then wait till you get to Sail the Darkness and the Queen of Thorn and Roses. Those are singles. Those are so good. And by the way, you mentioned Barry Sparks. He played on that album, Written in the Sand, which is such an overlooked album. That Written in the Sand album is so effing good. And that song itself, Written in the Sand, is I don't want to say it's a pop song, but it's just a great fun. It puts you in a good mood when you hear that song. Let me just ask you just real quick. In Search of Peace of Mind, of course, came out with the Scorpions years and years ago. This new reimagined version is so incredibly epic. There's no other word. It's epic. Talk to me about revisiting that one, and I guess it sort of ties into the whole 50th anniversary concept, right? You're going to go back to the beginning and say, okay, here's where I was then, here it is where it's now. Talking about redoing that one and just what that song means to you in general.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a perfect song to finish the album, and the most, the most important song, and the reason is because I was 15 years old when I was actually put the first note on the, ever recording something, and that was with the Scorpions' "Lonesome Crow." It's a song that I wrote when I was 15 years old in my mother's kitchen, all by myself. There was nobody involved, and Michael Voss actually sent me the original credits of the Lonesome Crow album, and it says Michael Schenker lyrics, Rudolf Schenker lyrics. Rudolf and I had zero knowledge of English. How could we have written any lyrics, so complete misinformation. It should have said music written by Michael Schenker and whoever did the lyrics. And so, because, and also the weirdest thing on this song, that it was my very first composition at age 15, and it had a solo in there that was so perfect, like I would never change a note ever. Like "Theme of the Imaginary Western" by Leslie West, or "Stairway to Heaven." You just don't. It something like that happens, and you would never change a note. I couldn't understand where it came from because I was in my developing years, and you can hear on the rest of the Lonesome Crow album that I'm an amateur, and I'm learning, and phenomenon, faucet, no heavy patting, year by year, everything got better and better, and so it just is such and actually the composition itself was actually pretty complicated to play. Even Rudolf, he can't play the fast picking and all of that kind of stuff on that song, and the title of it, "In Search of the Peace of Mind," is the theme of my life. Looking for contentment, and it all ties completely all the way. And you said epic, and that is exactly what I wanted to do.
It is so epic. It is so epic.
I wanted to make an epic out of it and put an extra piece on the end that, in the end, was again so incredible because I don't know how it ended up that way, but it almost sounds like, because of "In Search of Peace of Mind, Looking for Contentment," it sounds like an inner conversation, within ourselves, within myself, that there are so many different colors, wah wah and the howler, and it's like question and answer. Shall I go this way? Shall I go? It's like an inner conversation of creating turmoil or happiness, etc., etc. And you can, when I listen back to it, it sounds like I'm having a conversation, and actually describing, in the end, my whole 50 years. And so it could have not turned out better than that.
I've got a whole bunch of extra questions, but I'll ask you this. I was talking to Rev Jones the other day, who played bass with you for a while. He explained that your process to make a record is that you go in and you put all the guitars down, and then it's up for the singers and the drummers and the bass players to figure out where. Is that the recording process now? Is that still what you do? Okay.
Yeah, it's basically always the same because I know what I want. My passion is pure self-expression. I go to the inner infinite spring of creativity that never, there is never an end, and I've never been part of a trend. Instead, actually, I became a trend maker because people, copied my my lead guitar style in the 80s, and I actually didn't know that until later. I'm the kid in the sandbox, just having fun, no competition, not comparing, and not looking for fame or anything. It's just, I just love to enjoy putting three notes together and creating goose pimples. So when I go into the studio, even my co-producer, he has no idea what I'm going to be putting down, and he looks back in the beginning, like 10 years ago when we started, and I said, listen, Michael Voss, this is not a master class or a guitar clinic. Please focus on the production. And so he never looked back again since. And so Michael Voss actually used that time to make B plans for lyrics and melodies. And that's how we got Warrior. Warrior is one of the best songs, in my 50 years. And, I came back from the hotel and he said to me, look, this is what I did to your musical composition. And it became Warrior. I said, this is unbelievable, and it was then shared with all the other singers, which then Michael Voss had an idea. Michael Voss, by the way, he's a Michael Schenker fan, MSG fan, he's an 80s fan, he is a McCauley, he is a Bonnet fan, he is a Gary Barton fan. So he understands, when I speak to him and when we talk about, okay, let's figure out now, we have put down this guitar for that musical composition. Let's listen to me, what I imagine the drums should be like, to give the musicians a rough direction of where the journey goes. Because, it's a difference between knowing there's a half time or a double time, and so I have to kind of create some kind of a understanding of where the journey goes. And Michael Voss is so amazing picking up, what I'm telling. And then he puts his own Michael Voss stuff to it. And he's so good in doing that. And it's just a very compatible working relationship that when the other musicians in the end get the rough idea of the backing track, they can start to fantasize on what they can do with it and put their own stuff to it, make suggestions and stuff like that, and so, the indication of the backing track, gives them an idea what to do with it. And the same goes for the singers. And you're right. I never, ever tell a singer, lyrically especially, what to sing about, because I've never been interested in lyrics. I grew up listening to music. I stopped listening to music, started stopping, 15, 16, 17, 18, and then it was done, Then I had enough. I learned enough from Jeff Beck and my favorite players from the 60s. And so it just, I kind of lost my train now.
Well, it's okay. I was going to take up on what you said. You talked about the influences. And I have always said that if you listen to early Eddie Van Halen or Eddie Van Halen or early Randy Rhoads, there's a lot of Michael Schenker isms in their playing, especially on those first two Van Halen albums. You listen to some of the stuff you did with UFO or Scorpions, and then you hear the Van Halen stuff, and you go, "Hey, wait a minute, that's Michael's." So yeah, I hear a lot of that in the playing.
That's exactly what Rudolph said. Many years ago, you said, Michael, did you know that Eddie is actually playing a little bit of your melody line? I said, what? Really?
He is. I think it's the song Everybody Wants Some. Yeah.
I don't know, because you know what? The funny thing is, they were actually supporting UFO at the Starwood when I first came over to America. I was 19 years old, and people said like, "Oh, your support band has a really great guitar player," but I never took any notice, and ignored it completely. And later, I never knew Van Halen was supporting UFO then. I only found out many, many years later, because I never look back. I always go forward. I do what I do, and I don't compare. I don't, but it's just unbelievable that, and that was actually 5 years probably, or 4 years before they brought out the first Van Halen album, And Scorpions and we actually went to see them in '79 when I helped the Scorpions with the Left Drive album to open the doors for America for them, because I already had written a hit with Lights Out, and I was only 21 in '76, and we had Obsession, Strangers in the Night, and the band was really going to be one of the biggest bands in the world, but then I left for various different reasons. And Rudolph found out I did the Scorpions Left Drive album because Matthias wasn't able to do it, and so on. But, it's just like there's so much that was revealed to me in the 50 years, but not so much in the beginning, because I would not listen to anybody telling me anything, probably. But later, when I got older, and in the 90s, I found out that Kirk Hammett and Iron Maiden and Def Leppard and Slash and all those guitarists were actually fans, and I never knew, and it just continued over the years, and so I'm shocked today, because like Eddie Van Halen for me is basically the best, and I never knew. I was all even though I say I don't listen to music for 50 years, but some music you cannot ignore. It comes out of a lobby. It comes out in a boutique while you're trying clothes on or something.
Of course.
So that's how I discovered Metallica, The Unforgiven, beautiful song, And so it's just, I was blown away when I heard like how on earth is he doing this, And then later I found out it was tapping technique, but Eddie. And then everybody copied it and trashed him, because at the end you didn't know anymore who was who. I mean, there was like, guitar lessons in Los Angeles. There was like thousands of people walking around with guitar, learning, overnight success, which doesn't exist. But
true.
They trashed it for Eddie. But Eddie had more than that. He had melody. He had his brother is a drummer, and obviously is in a family in the genes, and he has a phenomenal sense of rhythm, and he has a phenomenal understanding of sound, and then of course with Templeman, the producer, all together. The first album, what I heard of it was so incredible, and so Eddie kind of became for me, the best there is, I mean, Jimi Hendrix, I actually discovered him much later in my life. I never really was that keen on it, but later I found how long the Watchtower, the sound and what he was playing is now for me, later in my life, unbelievable, but completely different to what Eddie does. But Eddie is the younger generation, and of course evolved and gone in a new direction to what Jimi Hendrix did, or Jeff Beck, or Leslie West, etc., etc. But it's phenomenal. I mean, Eddie was phenomenal.
Eddie was absolutely phenomenal, and I know we've run out of time. We've had half an hour. I just want to add two quick things. Michael Voss did an album with Herman Rarebell, Rock Wolves, a couple of years ago. Phenomenal. I love Michael, a great talent. And the album you did with Pete Way, other than the UFO stuff, of course, The Plot. I love that album. It is so much fun. That is such a great time. Yeah, and lots of great memories for Pete.
It's funny that you say that, because I helped Pete Way out many times throughout the 50 years, and unfortunately he lost control and drifted away, and in the end he died earlier than he should have. I mean, he has got such a charisma, and but he was singing, and he said, like, Michael, look, I have this. I want to be the singer on this, and I said, okay, well, we share this 50-50, and that's how it became the plot. Even the what's the song? What is the band Megadeth?
Megadeth, yeah.
Marty Freeman. Yeah, he came over to my studio. I had built a studio, first-class recording studio, and actually Marty Freeman, he came over, he found out about it, and he almost ended up playing on it. But I actually did all the lead guitar, and it worked out so amazing, just like you said. It was so unusual.
It's a fun album. When I listened to it, and I actually listened to it again last night, it sounds like you and Jeff Martin, the 3 or 4 guys in the living room just having a wild, crazy party. And it's just, there's such an energy to those songs. They're just fun. You feel like you're in the living room watching you, Pete, and everybody play. And it's very festive in terms of album. I think it's brilliant. But listen, I'm like I said, I have 1,700 songs in a playlist called the Michael Schenker Scorpions UFO playlist. So I'm sold on all of this stuff. Now I know we're past half an hour, so unfortunately we have to go. I have about another 18,000 questions, but we will do it, I guess, for next time.
Yes, next time.
Yes, thank you. Always a pleasure, and keep doing what you're doing. And folks, Immortal is a frickin' masterpiece. Buy not 1 but 2 copies. You'll need to keep one for later because you're going to wear the first one out. Thank you, Michael.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks
Cheers
for the interview. Take care.
You too now. Bye-bye now. Cheers.